contributions that the government of Grenada make towards these events sometimes go unnoticed and sometimes unmentioned. But the government of Grenada continue to invest significantly in the development of culture and the sustenance of our culture in Grenada. And I want to place on record that support has remained steadfast throughout in every aspect, be it financially or otherwise, Mr. President. I just want to recognize that. Mr. President, the success of Spicemas was hinged on a number of things, and I think it is quite fitting that we raise some of those initiatives that the Ministry of Culture, together with its stakeholders, would have embarked on that carried us to that journey. And a lot of it had to do, Mr. President, with dialogue and consultation, listening to our patrons, taking all those critical suggestions and constructive criticism to ensure that we continue to work on improving the Spicemas product. Mr. President, we took the opportunity to reconfigure a number of events to ensure that it meet the needs and demands of persons who are willing to partake in those events, Mr. President. I would think those initiatives paid out. One of the things that we wanted to highlight, Mr. President, we paid specific interest towards supporting the Calypso, which is the foundation of where we are in terms of music in Grenada. And we thought it fitting to start with Calypso, Mr. President. And we would have long heard the cry of persons indicating that we need to do more for Calypso. We need to recognize persons who would have contributed significantly in ensuring this art form continues. And so, Mr. President, we commenced that initiative by recognizing, starting from this year, to recognize 2 veteran artists at our Masquerade show. We started this year, and we hope to keep this as a feature going forward. That will remain as a feature of the Masquerade going forward. At least, Mr. President, while I am there as the Minister for Culture, probably I can't speak after I leave. So, those are policy decisions, Mr. President. So we believe that this initiative is valuable based on the feedback that we are receiving from patrons and also other artists, fellow artists. They believe this is an excellent start, Mr. President, and so we would have recognized 2 artists this year, and we want to make mention of them, the praying mantis and the flying turkey. They were here and they were quite ecstatic, and they were well received, Mr. President, and they were awarded by the Ministry of Culture and, of course, through Spicemas. And they would also receive some financial token, Mr. President, as part of recognition for their work and service to the development of Calypso in Grenada. Mr. President, we would also looked at a number of things in terms of prize monies that has been paid. Those prize monies have been increased. We have also increased subventions to the Calypso tents, Mr. President. And so we continue to work. We have also did some significant work in terms of capacity building, not only for within the Spicemas office, but also for the adjudication process. We know you can have a good product, and if you don't have a good adjudication process, you can show everything down. And so we wanted to ensure that we focus a lot also on the adjudication process to ensure that persons, when they come out and participate in the event, that they will be judged fairly as much as possible. Mr. President, judging, there is some level of subjectivity that cannot be removed. But the best that we can do is to put structures and processes in place to manage it as much as possible, Mr. President. And so we want to recognize those initiatives. We also went a bit further as well, Mr. President, and established a radio program which ran for approximately 1 month, Thursdays and Sundays, on 3 radio stations, speaking about Calypso. That program was called Brass Tacks, and that program was spearheaded by the Cultural Foundation and hosted by the CEO, Ms. Shover Wells. And we want to thank her for an excellent job that she would have done, having various Calypsonians on various nights and to speak about the importance of this initiative and to promote Calypso. We believe, Mr. President, this investment in the art form is one that will spark new and renewed interest so that persons can continue to support development of Calypso in Grenada. So, Mr. President, those are some critical initiatives that we have cited. Mr. President, while we have seen some significant success throughout this carnival period, clearly, Mr. President, we do have some challenges as well. And I think it is fair and important that we speak to those challenges. Some of it we have already cited and started working on it, and some of it we still have more dialogue to do to see how we can address those moving forward. Mr. President, one of the things that we believe is that we are onto something special. We are onto something special with Spice Mas. Spice Mas has immense potential to do a lot for Grenada. When you see superstars, be it NBA or otherwise, wanting to participate in our carnival, actually come in and play in our carnival, this speaks a lot. And this is a significant opportunity for us. And we must do our best to ensure that we do everything to improve this product that we call Spice Mas. Mr. President, one of the challenges that we see, and maybe I'll speak to just two issues, Mr. President. 20 minutes. Yeah. Person with the food. I don't want to be seen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I indicated, there are some evident challenges in front of us in terms of us ensuring that we improve on the product. And I just probably speak to two, Mr. President, and the first one being there is a discussion around our lyrical content of our calypso and soca artists, and also the other has to do with our masqueraders and the outfit that they wear on the street in terms of parading, in particular with the fancy mass band. Mr. President, these are very critical issues for us, and what we envisage is not for us as a ministry or Spice Mas to just impose any regulation, penalties, or anything of the sort, but we believe that we must first start with some dialogue with all interested parties to see if we can find a way to address this, because this in itself is a risk in terms of our social aspect, Mr. President. As you know, we are conservative people to some extent, and we have to manage what we do, because it is always said that the world is looking at us. And I don't think that we have to have a smaller costume for us to enjoy Carnival much better. I don't think so, Mr. President, because in comparison, we see people play Monday night mass fully clothed, and they do have a wonderful time. So I think this is something that can be easily addressed with dialogue, and I think that we can get this done once persons understand the challenge that we have and the objective that we're trying to achieve by ensuring that we do this in a more manageable and a responsible way, Mr. President. That is what we seek to do. Mr. President, I just want to indicate that in terms of financial impact, the numbers are not in as yet. In terms of visitors, we don't have those numbers as yet because Carnival just concluded. I will, once we have those numbers, update the House. Once we get an opportunity to come back here to inform this Honorable House on the numbers and the financial impact, once the Ministry of Finance does it. I think it is critical for us to understand the impact that this product has on our economy and how it has helped to create economic activity for everyone in Grenada. Mr. President, I just want to close on Carnival by just saying we are very fortunate as a people. And when you look at what transpired over this season, I mean, I went throughout, and persons were just simply wanted to have a wonderful time. And I think that is critical. We had minimal or no incident at all, Mr. President. I think that must be recorded as a success, not just for the police, not for Spice Mass, but for the entire nation, Mr. President. I think that we should commend the entire nation for the way how they have conducted themselves over this season. Mr. President, we just want to reiterate that we are willing to continue to work with our stakeholders, and we look forward to next year. There are some key initiatives, Mr. President, that we hope to work on. I'll just mention two in particular. We really want to do some more capacity building, work with our artists in terms of songwriting and developing that capacity, to strengthen that capacity so we can have better songs, better product. And of course, Mr. President, there has been a long cry from most of our artists in terms of copyright protection and royalties. We are going to do some work in that area going forward for 2020, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is all that I want to see on Spice Mass. For now, I just want to move on, Mr. President, to the Caribbean Festival of the Arts, Carriacou, which takes place in Trinidad. Starting from Friday is the opening ceremony to the 25th of August. Mr. President, of course, Grenada is participating in this important cultural event. And we would have a contingency of 120 persons going down to Trinidad to display our culture, participating in areas of dance, music, visual arts, literary arts, film, theater, and fashion, Mr. President. This is very important. The theme for this year's Carriacou, Mr. President, I think it was instructive that I mentioned it. The theme for this year is connecting, sharing, and investing. Mr. President, in terms of defining this theme, connecting is connecting our people, connecting our artists, cultural practitioners, sharing, the sharing of ideas, information, and experiences among member states. Mr. President, invest, we'll continue to invest in the development and the sustainability of culture and the creative industry in the region, Mr. President. So I think this is a very important theme for us to pay attention to. As you know, Mr. President, Carriacou is one of Carriacou's unifying commodity that is used just like West Indies cricket. So it's a very important initiative, and hence the reason why we are participating in that event, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to now move on to sports. As you know, we continue to break records. We continue to do things. I was speaking to somebody yesterday evening, Mr. President, a friend from Jamaica, a Grenadian, of course, living in Jamaica, and she said to me, you know that she just got married, and she said her chef was representing or overseeing Jamaica's participation in a cuisine show competition in Florida. And he was saying that, your little island is doing so well, you know. So, Mr. President, everybody recognizes our size, but they also recognize that we are doing well. Yes, and so we want to For the first time, they had Grenadian chocolate. Mr. President, we are doing excellent throughout the world as Grenadians, and we must be proud of that. And in sports, we continue to raise the bar. Mr. President, before I even speak further, I think all this started with Kirani James, Mr. President. And every time I speak to our young athletes, they always mention that whatever success that I have is as a result of him making us believe that we can do it. And Mr. President, I just want to say that, we have Pan Am Games over the carnival. Most persons would have been reveling, not following our athletes who are all the way in Peru, running and representing Grenada, and they too were doing very well. And Mr. President, I'm pleased to announce that Anderson Peters, javelin, who broke the Pan Am Games record with a throw of 87.31 meters, Mr. President. This is outstanding. This is outstanding, Mr. President. Mr. President, we also want to recognize Lyndon Victor, who got silver in the decathlon. His brother Kurt was also performing. He had to pull out because of injury, and so in communicating with them, we send our regards to ensure that he heals quickly. As you know, next year, 2020, in Japan, we have the Olympics taking place, Mr. President. So this is good news for us. We knew that they were going to medal, and we just keep our fingers crossed, and we got a gold and a silver, Mr. President. But I think mention must be made of Mark Felix, who placed 5th in that javelin event, and there were a number of persons, Braylon, who ran, and also Josh, who threw. They didn't get the result that they wanted, but we are behind them solidly, Mr. President, and we commend all the other athletes who would have done well in terms of representing Grenada. Mr. President, I want to make mention of the various persons who actually do the work on the ground, the coaches, the various clubs, the persons who we do not hear about, who wake up every morning and go every evening and go out with those athletes and train and talk to them, encourage them and motivate them. We never hear about these persons, Mr. President, but they are the ones who are the true success of those athletes, and we must recognize their efforts before we recognize even ours as a ministry, Mr. President, and even before we recognize the Olympic Committee and, of course, the Athletics Association, who put forward significant resources for those persons to move on. But those little initiatives on the ground, the person who are there with you every minute of the day, keep pushing you on. I think, Mr. President, we must continue to recognize those persons for their efforts, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just want to say that, sometimes we as a nation, we forget very easy. We forget very easy. And sometimes we as government have a responsibility to remind persons that we have what it takes to represent and to be successful in almost any sector, in any region, in anything that is taking place in this world. And we just want to continue to let our young athletes know, to continue to believe that they can be successful too. And we look forward to these athletes as we prepare for the Olympics in 2020, Mr. President. I just received an invitation to come to Japan, but which I had to decline, Mr. President, because, we have carnival here. So you never know, sometime, if not, somebody will have to go to be there with our athletes for 2020 to ensure that we do come out with a medal, Mr. President. So with these few words, Mr. President, I just want to thank this House for giving me the opportunity to give an update on the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts. Thank you.
Senator Winston Garvey.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I too would like to take this opportunity to recognize all our members here today. I know Sister Roberts is not here because she is not well, and I trust she will get a speedy recovery. I do hope she probably didn't do too much over the last few days that would have caused her to have aching feet. I don't know what happened, but in any event, drink some soup. Mr. President, I want to report on the ministries which I am given the charge of. And I want to start with, of course, disaster management. And to say that this year so far has been an extremely good year for us as a department, in as much as we've been able to secure funding, training, and other opportunities, equipment and the likes for this country. And as you know, in this day and age when we are looking at disaster from a comprehensive standpoint rather than what was historically the reaction to the hurricane. But as you know, we are exposed to so many hazards out there. As a department, we are working with all our stakeholders to ensure that we are adequately prepared. And in the event of having to respond, we can respond adequately. I would like to say a special thank you to the Government of Canada, through the Canada Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Fund, for sponsoring the upgrade of some 14 emergency shelters to facilitate persons with disability and the senior citizens. Last July, the 9th or the 10th and the 11th, we had the closing of 2 of those shelters. One, the Dover Government School in Carriacou, and the St. John's Christian Secondary Schools. We highlighted both shelters because the upgrade saw the installation of ramps, bathroom facilities that could accommodate persons with disability, and as I've said before, senior citizens. But it spoke to a very critical issue, Mr. President, the need that we have seen for collaboration, be it with the private sector, be it with NGOs, towards ensuring that we put systems in place that will meet the needs of our vulnerable population. And I want to single out here the Council for Disabled, who provided and outfitted those facilities with the necessary showers, the necessary toilet seats, and all those implements that will make life more comfortable and accommodating for persons with disability who had to or will have to utilize those facilities. So I want to say a special thank you to Sister Gabriel and her team. The Canadian government would have at least provided some 100,000 Canadian dollars for this upgrade. We also, Mr. President, in this period saw the Carriacou and Peter Martinique being approved for the Tsunami Ready Certification project. As you know, last year we had St. Patrick's being certified as Tsunami Ready, and we had to do the necessary consultation, provide the inundation map, the escape routes, just name it, all those information that will aid persons in the event of a tsunami to get out of the danger zone. So Carriacou and Pitamatic, they have been approved, and the 30th and 31st of July, we had the consultation on Carriacou and Pitamatic, where we had persons from the Pacific Tsunami Early Warning Center being present to lead the consultation and to get the stakeholders buy-in, the people of Carriacou and Pitamatic, to contribute towards this very important project. As you know, Carriacou and Pitamatic is pretty close to Kikem-Jenny. And Kikem-Jenny, as you know, ever so often she kind of indicates to us that she's alive. That is a possible threat that we have right outside of our shows. So the need to train our people and to have them with the necessary information as to how they can save themselves and save their property through this project is very commendable. We have the deadline to have the certification process completed is the end of September, And I must say, Mr. President, we are well advanced in our consultation and work being done. We have a local GIS expert, Grenadian that is, who is preparing the inundation maps, and we are well advanced in that regard. And I do believe, come the 30th of September, we will have a very, very outstanding presentation of Carriacou and Petit Martinique being certified as tsunami ready. Also, Mr. President, I want to highlight that only recently we had the 31st and the 31st of July and the 1st of August, a national stakeholders consultation on mainland. And that consultation brought around the table some 60, just over 60 stakeholders, working with the department, speaking to the preparation for this hurricane season. And it was indeed an exciting moment for us, because what we have seen this year compared to the other years, our stakeholders have taken on board the need to have their disaster plans in place, have the plan being tested, and they have asked NADNA for support to ensure that they prepare the plans. But they were around the table speaking with a level of authority, and I would say pride, that they have done the work. So in the event of a hurricane, a storm, they will be able to respond and respond adequately. I want to also take this opportunity to thank the United States Office for Foreign Disaster Assistance, USAID OFDA, for sponsoring this event. And they were on hand to witness the stakeholder consultation. And from the comments, they were indeed very pleased and impressed with the work that has been going on in Grenada. I also want to move to a number of training that we have been able to secure. So we had training for our district disaster committees in first aid and communication. As you know, there are two critical implements in being able to facilitate adequate response. And our teams, as you know, we have some 17 disaster district teams around the country. Not all of them would have been involved in the training, but it is a start in the right direction. We also had training for lead ministries, Ministry of Finance, Statistics, and Social Development in IDA, Initial Damage Assessment. That training is critical as it relates to being able to collate information that will speak to the level of destruction or disaster that you have faced. And those initial information will be the catalyst towards securing funding and assistance from the international community. So it's a critical bit of training, and I must indeed say a special thank you to the DANA team for being there and to push in this thing forward. As you know, I want to move on to legal affairs, Mr. President. We have made a promise to the legal fraternity as it relates to improvement in the homes for the court system. And I know quite a lot have been said out there, and some of it it's true, because we do not have all the facilities to sit our courts. But we made a promise, and we committed towards ensuring that the CLICO building, which we have secured, will be ready for the beginning of the new law term. Mr. President, I'm happy am I to announce that yesterday I had a tour of the building, had discussions with the contractor who is on site. They have full deployment on the 2 floors, the second and the third floor. Both floors have been stripped. As a matter of fact, the second floor is far advanced in terms of they start doing the construction of the office spaces and so forth. And they gave this commitment to the country that it will be ready by the middle of September, which is the beginning of the law term. And I look forward, as I said to them, I'll be there working along, because we want to make sure we capture the information and send it out to the nation that when we promise, we want to deliver on those promises. And God forbid something should happen that may delay. But as for now, they are on track. And I think I want to take this opportunity to commend the Minister for for Legal Affairs, who's been spearheading this work, and of course the Ministry of Infrastructure Development to make it happen. Also, Mr. President, I want to move to the Ministry of Works and to say the long-awaited St. Patrick's Road Rehabilitation project has commenced. It's probably about 8 years behind schedule when it should have first come on, but not happening before is a blessing in disguise for not only the people of St. Patrick's, but the entire country. Because when the first scope of work was done, and listening to the project manager, as he said, the first scope of work was done, and it was only to resurface the roads. When this government came into office and looked at the scope of works, and look at the extent of, at the size of some of the roads and the bridges, as you know, when it rains heavily, and you're inside of St. Patrick's, you lock in. Because the 4 bridges that will take you out from St. Patrick's into St. Andrews or into St. Mark, often the water overflow the bridges, so you lock in. This road rehabilitation will ensure that over 4 bridges will be upgraded, lifted, and widened, so it could become two-lane traffic. And not just resurfacing, but widening the road to accommodate 2-lane traffic in areas where it is now 1 lane. In terms of flood mitigation processes, box drain will be erected and widened, because every project that will be undertaken at this point, Mr. President, there is what we consider a resilient facility to ensure that projects will be able to withstand the impact of climate change. As you realize, we have heavier rains today. So floods is a common thing. If we were to maintain the 1950 road structure and drain pattern, we are spinning top in mud. It will not be a wise use of the 24 million US dollars that will be invested in this project. So I'm happy to say that the project has started, and given that quite a lot will be done in the north of the country in terms of tourism development and so forth, it is good sense to ensure that the roads are developed to fit the development in tourism. Of course, quite a lot of work has been done in the Shambo areas and so forth, so agriculture is another big thing for us, this government. So the widening and upgrading of the road will benefit farmers. So at this point, it's a win-win for everybody. And I want to again commend the Minister of Infrastructure Development and his team for painstakingly taking it through the period and to ensure that we have a project that will be able to serve the country and serve it well. Mr. President, I want to move on to the Ministry of Health. Before I go to the Ministry of Health, let me just conclude on this. I want to look at the school uniform and voucher program. As you know, every year, Mr. President, the government, through its social programs, supply to vulnerable families school uniform to ensure that children will be able to go to school. In addition to the school uniform, we also have the free books program. And this year for the school uniform program, $1 million has been budgeted. And looking at the trend over the years, it will be spent. In the last 7 years of the program, we have spent just over $7 million, and over 33,000 families benefited from this very important program. What we are very careful about, Mr. President, and we feel proud as a ministry in being there serving our vulnerable population, and some of our beneficiaries from SEED who are part of the program, or all the SEED beneficiaries are part of the program, and to see that some of these beneficiaries top their class, graduate with honors. It's a great investment in moving families away from the scourge of poverty. And I'm extremely happy about this, because when we look at the results in our CPE exams in the last 2 years, you would realize that the government schools are holding their own and doing extremely well. And I think these programs have contributed to the rise in those results that we're seeing in the primary school, in the CPEA exams. And as well, CSEC came out yesterday. And again, I've seen some extremely good results. I think the leader of government business should be speaking more about that. But extremely good results, and I want to bow to Carriacou. I say no more. I should say also, Mr. President, as it relates to the school books program, some $2.5 million have been invested this year in the upgrade of books. But most importantly, it's the first time in the life of the program that books were delivered to the schools before the end of July. Extremely important. It says something that quite a lot of planning would have gone into this process, and to ensure that the needs of the schools were catered for, considered, the needs of the students were catered for and considered, and all the ordering of those books were made so that families will have those books on time. So the necessary decisions that they have to make to buy those additional books that is not a part of the program, they'll be able to do that well. And I really want to commend the Minister of Education and her team for a job well done. Mr. President, I want to move on to the Ministry of Health and to say that as a ministry, Ministry of Health continues to stand in the gap and to provide in the service for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petermatic Health Service, that is, to ensure that the needs of our people are met. But before I go into this, I want to just state of this unfortunate incident, Carnival Tuesday night, where our Minister of Health had an accident. And as he would have said, it looked worse than it actually was. He came out from it unscathed, I should say, went to the ministry, to the general hospital to be treated, and was discharged. And I want to say of the vote of confidence that the minister would have demonstrated of his team at the hospital, going to the general hospital to ensure that he's been taken care of there. And yes, the doctor would have discharged him and move on. I want to move into an area, Mr. President, because I remember those days of the Leslie Sion investigative journalism, of the Paul Roberts investigative journalism. And modern day time, we have Selwyn Noel and Linda Straker. They investigate before they broadcast any news, and I want to commend them. This is what we need to do. I found it strange that today, mainstream media will just pull a story from Facebook and broadcast false information, fake news. It's unfortunate, but I want to call, as Minister of Information, I want to call on our media practitioners or journalists. Let's go back to the days of investigating stories before we disseminate them. It's really unfortunate. And what is so disturbing? To get a story from a person who would have done it before, post fake news on Facebook, and you know it's wrong, but don't mind, probably gets on a few likes or whatever. But it's bad news, fake news. And to be caught with those fake news is really unfortunate. Thank you for the warning, the 10 minutes gone. Pardon? How much minutes go? Okay, let me just close up, Mr. President. No, you should have given me a 10 minutes break. So I wanted to take this moment also to advise that the government of Grenada would have received confirmation from the Maria Hole Memorial Foundation of the donation of a 128-slice CT scanner. Mr. President, what is this saying to us really and truly? That, let me just tell you shortly what a 128-slice CT scanner does. It offers faster, safer, more accurate diagnosis of cases. That's what the 128-slice CT scanner. And what is so beautiful about this, Grenada is most advanced in the OSS region with this scanner that has been donated to us. Also, just to close, to say that we also have been able to procure an incinerator with funding from the Indian government, and we will be installed at the General Hospital to take care of medical waste. We also receive donation from the Republic Bank of a mobile cancer screening unit, and this is extremely important for us at this point in time. Mr. President, I know I will have to close, and I will close by saying that...
Senator, you're putting me in a difficult spot.
Okay, I close by saying thank you very much.
Much of what is being said now, you can easily say so on the adjournment.
Thank you very much.
Most of what you said before could have been said on the adjournment, and you first focus on your ministerial statements. But you put me in a difficult spot, because once I accommodate you, then I'm compelled by action to accommodate everybody else. And so, yes.
Mr. President? Mr. President?
Senator, the Honorable, Senator Chris Diali, and may I most profusely apologize, Senator Diali, for at the opening not welcoming you back into the chamber. As senators would have known, you had a brief break as a result of some personal matters, and well, we have been in touch, and I see that you are up, alive, kicking, and well, and I literally hope kicking. Football, of course, the badminton, shuttle that we used to engage in before. But sorry, it was an oversight really, and I take the opportunity to welcome you back. So you now have the floor. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the sentiments. Yes, I'm alive. I know about the kicking part, as you say, but we'll get to that. Mr. President, you have a question for Senator Garvey on the legal affairs issues and on his presentation. And just to find out, in the event of, first of all, let me congratulate the government and the ministry for working assiduously to get in premises for the legal community and the courts to get our legal issues dealt with as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. But my question is, what is happening to the cable and wireless building where the courts were previously? And we had to leave because of some issue. And was that issue ever identified as to the cause and as a result why we had to leave? And in a related issue as it relates to how the courts are functioning and its ability to function, is there any update on what is happening with the digitizing of our records at the registry and the improvement of services at the registry? Is the government also putting emphasis on these areas? Because as I understand it, it is critical as well as getting physical facilities for the legal system to function appropriately and efficiently. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before you answer, could I also ask him another question as I'm on the floor? And this one is on Ministry of Health, or should I separate it?
Of the questions that you're putting
Okay,
at
so
one
I'll
time.
come back
So
again.
I think in fairness, let him answer first, and
Yes.
then you can always pose another question, yes? You wouldn't lose the opportunity. Thank you. Senator Garvey?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As it relates to the cable and wireless building, as we all are aware, there was an air quality control issue. And as a result, we had to vacate the building because the legal fraternity said that it was not conducive for them to practice. Quite a lot of tests was done, and yes, there was some elevated level of the threat, and as a result, we have since moved. As it relates to fixing this problem, we have to work with the owner of the facility, and that's where the delay is, if you want to put it this way. But that's as much as I can say as it relates to the cable and wireless building. I don't have information on this at this point. I know quite a lot has been said as it relates to working towards digitizing the records because of course, the condition that they're in. I know we have been able to work with someone outside of Grenada as it relates to building capacity in the country, code matters and so on. But I cannot give more information on this. We can probably look to have it and present it at the next available sitting.
Could I advise that you submit a question along those lines? Because in many respects, the registry is almost at the heart of the judicial issues, and I happen to know of the gravity of the situation there, which needs immediate intervention. So maybe if you can put a question, subsequent to this as a matter of urgency, so that some attention could be given. As well as senators can write, senators can write individual ministers seeking explanation on things, quite apart from using the chamber. Individual organizations can write asking for ministerial action or responses to the status of issues. All of this is part of the governance, so one does not necessarily have to wait until the Senate convenes. But I know I have some very close friends in the legal fraternity, and they've even raised concerns with me about the state of affairs there, because it affects all of us. A lot of commercial and other transactions of a legal nature depends a lot on a functioning registry service. So it's an important consideration. You have surrendered the floor. You still have any follow-up questions?
Thank you, Mr. President, and most certainly will consider doing that question and submitting. Again, to Senator Garvey on the health issues, Ministry of Health, and the procuring of a CT 128 size CT scanner, which I think is an excellent addition to the services that we can offer in terms of diagnosis. But, Mr. President, my burning question to the gentleman, to Senator, the honorable gentleman on the other side is, we get all these sophisticated equipment, and then we have no maintenance program in place to ensure that they continue to do what they're supposed to do. So my question to you, to the President, is, are we at the same time implementing a maintenance program for the piece of equipment, and not only the maintenance, but having adequately trained personnel locally that can service equipment?
Senator Garvey?
Mr. President, thanks, and this is a very fair question because I think it will help us to ensure that when we receive donations, the only thing we can do probably to say a special thank you is to ensure that we maintain those things. And that's part of the whole regiment at the General Hospital. The training and updating of our folks or service providers to ensure that they're able to treat with those equipment, and at the same time to ensure that the life of it is extended. So yes, maintenance is a critical component of what we do at this point in time in the General Hospital.
Andre Lewis?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And just a follow-up question to Senator W.I. I know that the concern has been expressed about the equality in the former cable and wireless building and its potential impact on the legal practitioners. Is there any concern about the quality on the outside and its impact and potential impact on the surrounding inhabitants on the carnage? Because that will be of extreme importance for all of us.
Mr. President, another fair question. From my knowledge of the investigation that was done on the building, the air quality control was confined to one specific room. Just one room. Not outside of the room, just in that particular room. So, on the outside of the building is safe.
Senator, the Honorable Simon Steele, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wish to update. I will do my very best to confine myself to the time available, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wish to give an update to this Honourable House on some of the major projects that are taking place both within the Ministry of Climate Resilience together with the Ministry of Finance, but some major climate-related projects, and I'll speak to the CSEC results, which have just been released. So, Mr. President, the Green Climate Fund funded project together with the German government, what's known as the G-Cruise project. This is a water resilience project valued at $45 million US, 125 million EC dollars, so a significant investment in our water sector, one which will build resilience in that water sector, addressing the climate change challenges that we have in that sector, either through increased drought periods, dry periods, or there's very short, intense rain downpours which cause extreme flooding, etc. But how within the water sector we can control more of that water, capture more of it when it falls, to be able to store it as it falls, and then to distribute it around the country where it's needed most, whether it's areas that are currently underserved with regard to water and for our agricultural sector, or down in the south, especially within the tourism belt, which is prone to water shortages, and the need for us to increase service there. So a very, very innovative project. Also the burying of water lines. When they're above the surface, highly vulnerable to whether it's to hurricanes, whether it's to damage. So again, building that resilience by burying the main water lines. Plus water conservation programs. It's not just about capturing, storing, distributing more water. That in itself is not enough. We have to be far more conscious of how we use water, water wastage, efficiency within that sector. So conserving more means that there is more available for essential use. Also, what is significant about this project, it's heavily infrastructurally based. A lot of work will take place, especially in our rural communities. This will create significant job opportunities for our men and our women. And as an update as to where we are, this project has taken a number of years to negotiate and get to this stage. The project was approved in 2018 by the GCF board. That period through then till now has been negotiations, contractual negotiations between the German development agency, GIZ, who are going to be the implementing entity for this project, and the GCF. Those contractual arrangements have been agreed. Now what has been taking place in the contractual arrangements between the government of Grenada and GIZ. And just recently, they have reached agreement in principle. The lawyers are still talking to finalize that agreement, but the implementation team from Germany, the GIZ team, should be arriving in Grenada by the end of this month. And we're looking to formally launch this project, this signature project, for our water sector at the end of September. So we are making significant progress on this very important project. Another GCF-funded project, this is just for pre-feasibility work, is the Climate Smart, Climate Resilient Cities project. This is to establish our town of St. George's as the first climate smart, climate resilient city within the region. As I said, funded for pre-feasibility by the GCF, and the technical partner in this is New York University, who are developing a number of concept notes that will be submitted to the GCF for the next for project preparation, which will then lead on to funding requests. And some of the areas that are covered, very, very significant, will address sea level rise, whether that's on the Carriacou, highly vulnerable. The estimates are that within the next 30 years, the Carriacou could be underwater. Grenada, again, highly vulnerable. And then we have the Grenville area outside of the town, but it was viewed as such a vulnerable area, such a high priority area, we've brought that into the project. So looking at interventions that will address sea level rise and water inundation in those three areas. Also looking at sewage, wastewater management and potential solutions for that. The southern corridor between the town of St. George and the airport, that main artery here in the south, we have significant congestion issues. So it's looking at, working with New York University, looking at the creation of alternative routes, widening roads, and then reinforcing those roads that are vulnerable to climate impacts. And by addressing this congestion issue, will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which are a key cause of climate change. Then other areas include urban densification, how the town of St. George is expanding, looking at vulnerable communities, vulnerable to climate impacts, and how those vulnerabilities can be addressed, looking at how the town of St. George is sprawling, is moving, growing towards the east to St. David's, and how we can better plan, better manage that urban growth. Morris Bishop International Airport at sea level, the runway is highly vulnerable. There are areas that are already being attacked by coastal erosion, so it's looking at solutions to address that. I already mentioned Grenville, the main road, that coastal road, what can be done there. And then a range of projects, an omnibus of projects, which is looking at building resilience within our rural communities, how we can make them more resilient to the negative impacts of climate change. As I said, this project, it's pre-feasibility, a lot of theory right now. The concepts that are being developed are valued in the region of 300 to 500 million US dollars. As I said, highly ambitious. But this isn't just about the theory and submitting proposals that will go nowhere. We're already working with the GCF, with New York University, to pull out projects where we can actually achieve quick wins. And one such project we've pulled out of this is a greenhouse gas emission project. It's a project that we are about to submit for direct funding to the value of 25 million US dollars to the GCF. We call it the G-LEAP. We had the G-Cruise, now we have the G-LEAP project, which is an energy efficiency project, which will ensure that all government buildings are carbon neutral. They will all be installed, if the proposal is accepted, with solar panels, so will all be self-generating, and then energy efficiency programs within government buildings. Are street lights a significant consumer of electricity? So converting the energy inefficient sodium light bulbs to energy efficient LED light bulbs across the country, significant savings to the government electricity bill, money savings that could be used for more productive things. And also the installation in those areas that are currently underserved by street lighting, the installation of solar-driven stand-alone lights. There will also be a facility for the private sector. The private sector could access for energy efficiency solutions within their businesses. So again, a very, very innovative project. We're working with the Caribbean Development Bank and UN Environment in the development of this proposal, and it will be submitted shortly to the GCF. Its decisions aren't going to be made overnight. The discussions will take time, but this is the field, this is the environment that we're working within. Two very important international meetings that are coming up, of which Grenada is playing a very significant role. The first is the United Nations Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, which will be held in New York on the 23rd of September. This is a global call for action, greater climate action, greater call for the necessary resources, financial resources, for countries such as Grenada, those developing nations that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, to provide additional support. Thank you, Mr. President. To provide support and the financial resources to do the things we need to do, but also calling upon the developed countries, the major polluters, who are at the forefront of the cause of climate change through greenhouse gas emissions. So within this summit, Grenada, together with small island developing states, are pulling together what we're calling a SIDS package through the Association of Small Island States. The Secretary General has called on countries to put forward innovative, ambitious, bold, transformative projects. And it was decided at a meeting a few weeks ago in Abu Dhabi, which I attended, that it was very clear that however innovative our island projects are, they will get lost in that global noise. So it was decided with Grenada, islands like Grenada, the Maldives, Jamaica, Palau, Belize, driving this to combine our proposals, our solutions, as this SIDS package, some 40 plus islands, so we can show significant scale, significant ambition in terms of the action that we wish to take. And this approach has the full support of the Secretary General, and we anticipate that on the 23rd of September, Grenada, together with other small island developing states, will have an opportunity to have our voices heard on the international stage. And this event leads into the COP25 in Chile at the end of the year, which is the major climate negotiations, and will set the bar in terms of the level of ambition all countries globally should be working toward. In addition, on the 24th of September, piggybacking off the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, is a launch by the Global Commission on Adaptation. This is a commission that is led by Bill Gates, Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the UN, and Kristalina Georgieva, who is the current CEO of the World Bank, together with 19 commissioners, specific countries around the world, of which Grenada, our Prime Minister, is represented. And what they will be launching on the 24th of September is a a year of action. It's focused on adaptation. There are two elements: mitigation, which is most appropriate for those developing countries, those high polluters, but adaptation for us, low polluters, but those most vulnerable to climate change, those of us who have to adapt to the new normal of climate change. So this is again focused on increased global action and financial and technical support, again for countries such as Grenada in the battle against climate change. And as said, this is another example of the Prime Minister's selection to be one of these handful of global commissioners is a credit to our Prime Minister's leadership and Grenada's leadership in the area of climate change and climate action. Last month, Mr. President, there was the launch of a World Bank CRIF-funded coast project. That's the Caribbean Oceans and Aquaculture Sustainability Facility. This is a project that both Grenada and St. Lucia are the first to pilot, and this is a fisheries sector parametric insurance program. So this is insuring our fisher folk, our fish installations, fishing vessels, equipment against extreme weather conditions, including hurricanes. So this is providing security for our fishing sector. This is a grant-supported project just for the first year and provides us with coverage from July 2019 through to June of 2020. So we will be working with our stakeholders within the fishing sector to work out a way of funding and supporting this program so that it's sustainable and long-term moving forward. Quickly moving on to plastics and styrofoam. We passed legislation in this very House, a non-biological, biodegradable Waste Control Act. The ban on styrofoam has been successfully implemented, both in terms of the importation, sale, and distribution of styrofoam, those specific styrofoam products. They are now out of our system. The ban on plastic bags, the importation ban came into effect in February of this year. The sale of non-biodegradable carrier bags to retailers will come into effect from the 1st of December 2019, and then the complete elimination of non-biodegradable plastic bags from the 1st of February 2020. So we are working with retailers, with importers, for that smooth transition when there are no more of what we've become accustomed to, these bags that pollute our streets, our communities, our waterways, and ensuring that the complete elimination of those to sustainable alternatives will be as smooth as possible. The third area are other single-use items, whether that's cutlery, food containers, plates, glasses, straws. That was supposed to come into effect on the 1st of February of this year, but there were some concerns about the economic impact that would have on our vendors, our food vendor providers. So we're currently working with a consultant from the World Bank who are doing an economic analysis to see how the transition, what the best timing of the banning of those single-use plastics and the introduction of their more expensive alternatives will have a minimal economic impact, and the timing of that. So we're working with the World Bank consultants to do that. So, Mr. President, I will now quickly move on to the Ministry of Education and speak to the recently published CSEC results. I got to say, Mr. President, I got actually a little emotional this morning because as this session started, my son, who sat his exams, just got his results, and he WhatsApped me his results. And as a father, it makes me very, very proud, very, very proud of the results that he achieved, far, far beyond expectation. And as my son was texting me, he's saying he was in tears with his mother, and a little choked. So enables him to move on and do the things that he wants to do. And that is a similar story for many parents. And it's important to give credit to the students, but also the teachers. We cannot forget our teachers and the tireless work that they provide in terms of educating our kids. And then, of course, the parents who support their kids late at night as they go through this process. And as said, speaking again as a parent, as a father, knowing the anguish our children go through and being able to share that with them. So in terms of the results, Mr. President, there were 11,935 entries this year, of which 1,564 achieved a grade 1, 3,169 grade 2, 3,661 grade 3, 2,101 grade 5, 738 grade 4, 738 grade 5, and 675 ungraded. The overall pass rate, Mr. President, was up 5% on last year's results. So average pass rate of 74.54%. And again, that is a credit to our teachers and our students. Performance in maths, which is always a challenging area, remains stuck, similar levels to previous years at 38.6%. And I know within the Ministry of Education, significant effort is being placed on their action plan for literacy and numeracy. We know, just like the rest of the Caribbean, where our results in literacy and numeracy isn't at the level that it needs to be, but at least we have stopped the slide and work continues there. The area of the sciences, chemistry, biology, physics, we saw a marginal increase on results from previous years. So we are seeing many, many bright points in the results that we're seeing in our schools. And again, I wish to congratulate Carriacou, who was a top performer, Tasia Patrice of Hillsborough Secondary, who attained 15 passes, 14 at grade 1 and 1 at grade 2, a significant achievement. And I also want to single out Hillsborough Secondary because my niece, who is like a daughter to me, she went to school there and she attained, I believe it was 12 grade 1s when she went there. Her academic attainment enabled her to go on to complete her school in the UK. She's now at university, holding her own with other international students. And I think this is a credit, not just to our education system, but I'd like to single out Carriacou. Carriacou constantly a top performer, and Hillsborough Secondary a consistent top performer. Just a few more seconds, Mr. President, just to finish this point. I think we should be proud of ourselves here in our Tri-Island state and the abilities, the skills that we're imparting on our young men and women. And Senator Cox mentioned it from the sporting area. Grenadians can hold their own wherever we choose to walk in this world. And I think it's something we should all be proud of. And I believe we are building a foundation, a solid foundation, with our young men and women that I think will serve our nation for generations to come. I thank you, Mr. President.
Christopher Dialli.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have a couple of questions for the Leader of Government Business, in particular under his Ministry of Climate Change and Resilience. But before I get there, I also want to offer you congratulations on your performance of your son. And we all know how trying it can be for the parents. during those times of exams and preparation. Under your Ministry for Climate Change and Resilience, my question to you, Mr. President, is this. You know, when we take, for example, the GCF project and the approval when we got from GCF of these monies that we could get to use, it is now 9, almost 10 months before we could see a penny because of the red tape that has to be done and put in place, the contracts, the negotiation, the legal work, and so on and so on and so on. But, you know, climate change, not waiting for us, you know, Mr. President. When you look at all the international reports, our temperature rose again, highest that have ever been since the recording, and the melting of the ice caps and so on, and the constant sea rise, the scorching of our reefs, it's not waiting on us and the red tape. So my question to the leader of government business, and I hear you talk about the meetings that we plan to attend as a SIDS, which is excellent, and that is where we should go as a group so we can have a greater voice. But is there any consideration being given to reducing the red tape to get monies available for the projects that we have identified for our countries, which are going to feel the impact more than anybody else? The infiltration of seawater into our normal waterways for agriculture. What is going to happen? And as I say, Mr. President, through you, we're not waiting. Temperature rising, waiting on nobody. And what's happening and the rising of the seas and what we see happening. But we're waiting a long time for the money to help us to mitigate. So is there any consideration being given to reducing the red tape and the time for us to get access to these monies so that we could prepare our countries and our people to deal with some of these effects?
Mr. President, Senator Dialli raises a very, very good point, and this is a cry that is heard certainly from developing countries, the most vulnerable, who, as you rightly say, we cannot wait. Sea level rise, climate change does not wait for lawyers, for financiers. It is there on our doorstep. And in all of our engagement, both at a national level as small island state representatives, it's a constant message. We push with the international institutions. They do hear us, they do recognize it. They are moving. The GCF, for example, have recently introduced what they call a simplified access approval process. It's simplified, but it's still complex. Everything is complex. It's all very data-driven, evidence-based, but they recognize that they are too slow and they are making moves. They're just not making those moves far enough. And the significance of these two events in September, the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit and the Global Commission for Adaptation, all speak to the need for accelerated action. There are international voices that are highly sympathetic, Mr. President, to our plight. All we can do is continue to apply pressure and take advantage of these fora that are presented to us and make our voices heard as loud as possible. And that is precisely what we're doing. We are seeing some moves. It's not fast enough.
And another question, another note. Senator spoke of the ban of single-use plastic bags coming in December and later on in 2020, a complete ban. My question is there any consideration being given for the cost of the reusable bags? Because when we moved to banning the single use, I was in another country recently where you went to the supermarket, where you go with your reusable bag and you pack your stuff. But the cost to the ordinary person of some of these bags sometimes are prohibitive. And I'm wondering if there's any consideration being given to having these bags at a significantly reduced cost, so that some supermarkets charge you $5, $10 to buy one of these bags. The ordinary person may not be able to do that. And as we move away from single-use plastic bags at the groceries and supermarkets in particular, is there consideration being given to selling these bags probably at $1, $2, whatever, so that we could facilitate and get a buy-in more generally for the use of the reusable bags versus a single use?
Again, another good question, Mr. President. From government side, we have reduced the import duties on these reusable biodegradable items. So we're providing some level of incentive to ensure that the cost, the total cost of these alternatives aren't fully passed on to the consumer. Part of the work that we're doing with the World Bank, it is looking at some of the other single-use plastics, but it's doing that economic analysis to understand those economic dynamics of it. So we will be having some more quantifiable data in terms of understanding what else can be done to ensure that the costs of these items they are as cost effective as possible. But what we have to remember, Mr. President, is these are, unless government were to subsidize this, and with our limited fiscal space, it would be very difficult for us to do this. But we're working very, very closely with the importers. We are working hand in hand, a very close working relationship, understanding their economic dynamics, the costs that are involved, the selection of the most appropriate and the most cost-effective products. There is acceptance that there is a cost uplift. There is no question about that. Products such as styrofoam, single-use plastics, there is nothing cheaper in the world. You can't compete on price for those products. So those alternatives are more expensive. It's just ensuring that there is no profiteering or excessive profiteering from this, and those costs are being passed on are as real as possible. But this is simply the way Grenada is. It's not just Grenada. It's the way the world is going as we move to more sustainable solutions.
Ron Redhead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me just join and congratulate as well Senator Steele on his son's achievement. I think, you know, every parent, Mr. President, must feel proud around these moments, and the teachers certainly I want to join with them as well, as everybody has, expressed. I think that is very important. So I'm going to be kind in my questions as a result. Now, Mr. President, the question to the Senator in relation to his particular ministry. Now, the idea that within 30 years, we would see a sea level rise of proportional levels, etc. I have this question now. What sort of community engagement is currently ongoing? What level of that is ongoing? And also, Mr. President, he spoke of banning items. Now, the issue with the styrofoam has a lot to do with the environment, garbage, etc. That is true. But, Mr. President, when we look at what is contributing essentially to the damage of the ozone layer and that sort of thing, the question of CFCs, I'm not certain if he's aware of that, but recently in Carnival, a particular song was surfacing around the area, and while it had a different connotation, but the message out of that, in my view, should be linked towards the environment. Air fresheners, Mr. President, contribute extensively to damaging the environment and the ozone layer as we use it. A lot of that was used during the Carnival period, while he did not speak particularly on that. But in light of his ministry, I think maybe that is something also that should be considered to be regulated, if not banned fully. Thank you.
Senator Steele.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Well, addressing the second question first, CFCs are now a lesser issue in terms of global warming. It is greenhouse gases which are different to CFCs. The depletion of the ozone layer, which was a major issue couple of decades ago, there was a lot of focus on the hole in the ozone layer. That's actually started to repair itself. There have been major efforts globally to ban CFC products. So there are actually very few CFC products still available. The Fisheries Division just underwent a major swap out some of the refrigerants that are used. So for commercial applications, there are products that are still CFC rich. and there was a project to replace all of those gases in the refrigerants to ammonia, non-CFC producing. So there's been a global effort to address CFC. So that isn't it. The biggest issue is greenhouse gas emissions, so from carbon dioxide, from methane, from other gases that are generated from fossil fuels. That is the major problem. So in terms of us focusing our attentions on if it's a spray can, I'm not even sure those spray cans still contain CFC. That isn't really a priority. Priority is in greenhouse gas emissions. Regarding the carénage, there is significant community engagement. There was an event 2 or 3 months ago on the carénage, highlighting the work that the Green Climate Fund, New York University Government of Grenada is doing with regard to this Climate Smart Cities initiative. And I believe there were over 1,500 attendees at that activity. We're engaging the businesses, residents within the area. They're important stakeholders, have an important voice in the crafting of solutions and the vision that is being developed to protect the carénage. But yes, community engagement, important, we recognize it, we're doing it.
Item 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees.
The Honorable Simon Steele.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I beg to move that the following papers are laid on the table. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of SpiceMass Corporation for the year ended 31st December 2015. 2, report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of SpiceMass Corporation for the year ended 31st December 2016. 3, report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Confiscated Assets Fund for the year ended 31st December 2017. 4, report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Grenada National Accreditation Board for the years ended 31st December 2016 and 2017. 5, report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements on the Basic Needs Trust Fund, BNTF, Grenada, for the period 1st January 2018 to 31st December 2018. 6, fourth annual report on the Office of the Integrity Commission for the year ended December 2017. 7, annual report of the Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee, the FROC, for the year ended 30th of April 2019. And 8, annual report of the Grenada National Training Agency, GNTA, for the year ended December 2018.
Honorable members, the question is that the following papers and reports from select committees be laid on the table. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of SpiceMass Corporation for the year ending 31st of December 2015. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of SpiceMass Corporation for the year ending 31st December 2016. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Confiscated Asset Fund for the year ending 31st of December 2017. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Grenada National Accreditation Board for the year ending 31st of December 2016 and 2017. 5, report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Basic Needs Trust Fund, BNTF, Grenada, for the period 1st January 2018 to the 31st of December 2018. 6, fourth annual report of the Office of the Integrity Commission for the year ending December 2017. 7, annual report of the Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee, FROC, for the year ending 30th April 2019. 8, Annual Report of the Grenada National Training Agency, GNTA, for the year ending December 2018. Honorable members, it is so ordered that the papers be laid. Again, honorable members, and that is more so again for the other side. Again, I raised the question of these papers. Many reports have been laid. And since my return to the Senate, which occurred in December 2014, not a single question from my recollection has arisen from the other side in respect to any of these reports. And it is my subjective opinion that this is really very unfortunate. The Constitution of our country lays out, I'm trying to find the section, that Parliament has a responsibility of oversight. These are very important reports and papers, and I've been encouraging senators to peruse them and to raise pertinent matters which may emerge from out of these papers. I think really it's a significant shortcoming. Senator Diali can tell you that some time past, Senator Diali will recall that we spent quite a bit of time on these papers with appropriate questions and in some cases motions. But I think that our democracy is being shortchanged by the absence of a more proactive participation by members on the other side. These are just some remarks I would wish to make, because these papers is an expression of the accountability that must come from the executive and from governance. It is us now to, as I said, examine them. And as I say, so far on this second sojourn in the Parliament, not a single question or motion has come. And, you know, I think I would say no more on this, but I'll sit and wait and see. Because these audits are important. They're important records. And the law requires that they be laid before the House for a particular purpose. The government side has fulfilled that purpose by the minister submitting them to Parliament. It is now for the other side to scrutinize these, raise questions where you think they may be appropriate, ask for further explanations, as the case might be. If we're going to have a healthy democratic engagement, it's important that we participate in the process fully, because there's absolutely no stumbling blocks in the way. All of these documents are consistently laid on the table by the leader of government's business. They piles them. So a word to the Senate on this question.
Item 9, petitions. Item 10, government notices. Item 11, unofficial notices. Item 12, questions. Item 13, personal explanations. Item 14, motions.
Senator, the Honorable Simon Steele, Leader of Government's Business in the House.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor-General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the second session of the 10th Parliament on Monday, the 19th of November, 2018, was further deferred to a date to be fixed, be it resolved that the said address be now deferred to a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that whereas debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor-General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the second session of the 10th Parliament on Monday, 19th November 2018, was further deferred to be a date to be fixed, be it resolved that the said address be now deferred to a date to be fixed. Honorable members, the question is that the motion be resolved that the said address be now deferred to a date to be fixed. All those who have that opinion, say aye. Aye. The contrary opinion, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senator Steele.
Item 15, bills.
Mr. President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2019.
An act to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow from various sources a total amount not exceeding $118,800,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars, shortly entitled 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Act 2019.
Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the relevant standing order of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the standing orders be set aside in order to allow the bill to be taken through all of its stages at this sitting of the House. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. President, as this is a money bill, I can confirm that I have the Speaker's seal of approval to proceed. Mr. President, this House is being asked to approve a loan authorization to the value of $118,800,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars. Mr. President, this is a loan facility that has been provided to us through the World Bank's International Development Association, also known as IDA. Before the Ministry of Finance can actually access these resources, this bill must come to Parliament and be approved, as I said before, it can be drawn down, and that is the process that we're following right now. So, Mr. President, IDA resources are highly, highly concessional. Loans do not get any cheaper than this. The rates that are offered on this facility of $118 million, equivalent to 44 million US dollars, are rates in the region of less than 1%, about 0.5%, significant grace periods, so you don't have to pay anything back, periods of 5 years and the like, and payback periods between 20 and 40 years. So extremely, extremely soft loans. And Grenada is one of another number of countries that are eligible for these resources. There are other countries here in the region, such as Barbados and Antigua, who are not eligible for these resources, wish they could have access to these resources. So it's basically part of our Grenada's status, but also the significant levels of either support that we are receiving, that we've received in the past, are as a result of the good fiscal practices that Grenada has demonstrated going through the structural adjustment program and then coming out of that adjustment program and continuing to demonstrate strong fiscal responsibility. So it's based on our performance, the level and the concessionary rates that are provided. The programs, there are specific programs that these resources will be used to support. And these are strategic initiatives, all that will assist in developing and growing our economy. So first of all, Mr. President, of that 45, I'll speak in US dollars here, of the 44 million US dollars, $3 million is to support the CARSIP program, another World Bank project. First of all, this $3 million is extra monies that the World Bank has provided us. So this was outside the original negotiated envelope, but again, based on Grenada's strong performance, based on its performance and some of the strategic projects it's working on, the World Bank has provided an additional $3 million for the CARSIP program. The CARSIP program is a project involving Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia. This is providing broadband connectivity, both regionally and within Grenada, so fiber optic connectivity around the country throughout the islands, which will provide that backbone support for e-government services, e-education, increasing our technological advancement and in support of services that are offered both at a public and private sector. These additional $3 million will be used to plug a gap that was identified in the original CARSIP program, which involves connectivity between our schools. One of these projects, Mr. President, is to facilitate e-learning. So you could have a class being run at one location, at one school, that could be transmitted to every other school in the country. It could even be used for lessons from within the region or even internationally. This is first world stuff, Mr. President, that Grenada will be able to benefit from in the education of our children. So this additional $3 million will enable us to acquire necessary, essential equipment for our classrooms that will enable this capability. $20 million is part of development policy credit. Mr. President, Grenada had to perform both at a fiscal level. There were certain developmental policy areas that the World Bank had incentivized us to follow, including the first Blue Growth Development Development Policy Credit, which was linked to whether it was the banning of plastics, styrofoam, whether it is the development of an integrated coastal zone management policy and legislation, which we will be presenting later on today. Other areas that speak to our physical development, and by achieving all of those prior actions and the conditions associated has released $20 million US, which will be able to support other key programs within government. $15 million US for digital governance. This also ties in to the CARSIP program, and this is about digitizing essential government services, whether it is for registrations, applying for licenses, making payments for the general public, increasing the efficiency of access to government services. So if you're living in one of the rural areas, if you're in Carriacou or Petit Martinique, you would not have to come to St. George's in order to renew a license or to make certain payments. All of that will be able to be done electronically, and that digital governance program is there supportive of that, and as I said, dovetails into the CARSIP program. Finally, Mr. President, $6 million US, which is for a regional OECS health initiative. $2 million of that will be allocated specifically for healthcare initiatives here in Grenada. The other $4 million as part of a healthcare enhancement program within the region. So, Mr. President, these are all capital projects that bring efficiency to public service, and it's enabling government to serve the people better and create this enabling environment for growth and development of our economy. And, Mr. President, it's for those reasons I commend this bill for its second reading.
Senator, the Honorable Winston Garvey.
Mr. President, I rise to give my full support to the second reading of the bill before us, and just say specifically that with the support that this government is receiving in terms of idle loan facility from the World Bank, it's a clear indication of the prudent fiscal management of this economy. And I'm extremely proud to say that I'm a part of a government that has taken the bulls by the horn when it came in 2013 to ensure that it stabilized the economy and to put in place systems that will, as we've seen right now, an economy that is robust, that is doing well, and as a result, we are getting support. So this loan authorization at very concessionary rates, 0.5%, and to be repaid, you have to be repaid over a 40-year period, and to have a grace period of between 5 to 10 years is extremely concessionary. But what is most important, as the leader of government business would have highlighted, the services that this will provide for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique is extremely important. And as we're saying, what we are doing at this point in time is to continue to build this economy and continue to ensure that our people can receive, as I say, first world services within this small state. And I'm extremely happy that we are doing this today, and I give my full support to the second reading, Mr. President. Thank you.
Ron Redhead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, I have a very different view in relation to what I just heard, obviously. Let me just... Now, Mr. President, the 2019 budget loan authorization bill is very interesting. And it tells a particular story, in our view, about the Grenadian economy. When we go through, Mr. President, the numbers, and I must say and must add, Mr. President, I'm currently going through numbers for preparation for the 2020 budget debate. And I'm putting it in line with this request for the loan, right? The bill seeks to authorize, Mr. President, government to borrow nothing more than $118 million. Now, in just 7 months, Mr. President, into the fiscal year, government is coming to approve a loan to borrow $118 million. And out of that $118 million, if it borrows that amount, $9.9 million is all that it needs to finance what it put forward here by way of numbers, right? Just 9.9. But you need to borrow $118 million. That's not adding up. You have $108 million, Mr. President, $8.1 million, Mr. President, extra. What do you plan to do with that? But the interesting part about this is that, Mr. President, out of that $9.9 million, 9.1 is under recurrent expenditure. 9.1. So if you're saying to me that you are going to grow the economy, you're borrowing this is money that will benefit, you just have two capital projects, the Ministry of Climate Resilience and the Ministry of Health. Now, we don't have any issue, Mr. President, if things has to be done. That is important. People would get jobs, etc. But this is not giving a clear indication that it is to grow the economy. Recurrent expenditure will not grow the economy. That has to do, Mr. President, with wages to ensure that you have gas in the vehicles, etc. And it's very, very telling in our view. So imagine, Mr. President, you go into the bank to take a loan. You want to remodel a room in your house, a kitchen of some sort. All you need is $10,000. But you go and say to the bank, you need $10,000 to do that remodeling, but you're looking to borrow $118,000. Way more than what you need. Almost 11 times more, Mr. President, than what you really need the money for. We have some issues with that. Mr. President, the last time something like that happened, and I want to make that absolutely clear, we saw, Mr. President, an appropriation bill brought to the House, and that was on the verge of the elections. Mr. President, we saw after that a set of door, window, fridge, all kind of thing was given out. I just want to say this. If it is that you're borrowing $118 million, but your spending, your expenditure, is only $9.9 million, what you intend to do with the $108.1 million? That's my view. Mr. President, the truth is that in accordance with the Public Finance Management Act, Section 29, you only borrow for two main reasons. One, insufficiency of funds, and two, in the case of emergency, a disaster of some sort. And we have been blessed so far not to be hit by any extreme disaster. So the only other logical reason why we have to borrow these monies is because of insufficiency. The budget that we approved last year is not sufficient. You got the fact, Mr. President, that you need to borrow for recurrent expenditure is something that you should have already put forward. This is annual. You know you will spend X amount. You know you'll spend X amount on salaries, wages, etc. So that is interesting. And I have here, Mr. President, the fiscal summary. Just briefly, I'm not going to call the numbers for the period March 2019 and June 2019. In the case of current revenue, Mr. President, government underperformed. In the case of total grants received, government underperformed. In the case of total current expenditure, Mr. President, government spent less or maybe they had less to spend. In the case of primary surplus, Mr. President, government achieved that, but it was under the targets that they set. In the case of June, same story. Current revenue underperformed. Total grants underperformed. Total current expenditure, you spent less or you had less to spend. A primary surplus again was achieved, but it was under the targets. And when we take these numbers, Mr. President, and we compare the same period in relation to last year, what we see is a trend. In fact, this year is lower than last year as well, with these same numbers. So, Mr. President, it is telling us something particularly why we need to go to IDA, and let us try to put that into perspective here. The International Development Association, Mr. President, is a member of the World Bank Group, but they really give to poor countries. They are not giving because the economy is doing so buoyant and so on. The reason why the loan is at this rate is because you may not have the ability to pay at the higher rates. That's really what it is. And government certainly must seek the best deal. We agree with that. But, Mr. President, it's not because you're doing so well. Barbados cannot access it, Antigua cannot access it, because they are doing a little better than us. In fact, according to the report from the Latin American and Caribbean community, Grenada stands about number 4, right? So Antigua, I believe, is ahead. The fact is, Mr. President, even if that is the reason, that's still not making any sense as to why you need to borrow $118 million, Mr. President, just to cover $9.9 million in spending. We have some issues with that. So, Mr. President, let us now try and inspect the numbers. Right? Now, we don't have any issue with vote 50, Ministry of Health. It's important, Mr. President, we wish a little more could have been allocated. We don't have any issues with vote 21, pensions and gratuities. We understand the need for that. Mr. President, we don't have any issues with police, vote 12. Any way that they could get upgraded, we are happy for that. But, Mr. President, when we analyze, you say this is to grow the economy. Vote 1, Governor General, recurrent expenditure $655,500. This is under the recurrent expenditure. In fact, Mr. President, we hear a lot of talk now about the judiciary going to get its home and so on. We hope it's practical and it is achieved, but the Governor General needs a residence.
Yeah, Mr. President, I stand on a point of order, 37.1, scope of debate.
1 second, please. Standing order 37.
Yeah, so the debate upon...
1 minute, 1 minute.
Yeah, so the debate upon any motion, bill, or amendment shall be relevant to such motion, bill, or amendment, except in the case of a motion for the adjournment of the Senate. The senator on the other side, I think, is talking about the next bill, supplementary appropriation bill that he's going through. So I think he's a little confused. The beginning of his statement when he was speaking to the loan authorities, he was mixing the two up. He was confused there too, but I gave him latitude. But right now, he's going down a route that he should save for the next bill, Mr. President. What he's discussing right now is not relevant to the bill that's before us.
Mr. President, if I may, I understand that argument that it's two separate bills, but the purpose for the borrowing is outlined in this one.
No, this one is supplementary.
Yeah, but, well, hold on. Mr. President, let me just...
Mr. President, the member on this side is very confused. No, it's not, Mr. President.
Right. Now, Mr. President, I understand the budget loan authorization bill. I know it is separate because it needs to give to the extent. So, Mr. President, I will just go further to say this. While this is the supplementary bill, the purpose is that they are correlated. They are correlated. All right, Mr. President, well, I would certainly respect that. So, Mr. President, then let's stick to the specific bill, the budget loan authorization bill. Now, on this part of the bill, Mr. President, you said that in the explanatory notes, you said that this bill seeks to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow specified amounts of monies to cover the borrowings for the period August to December. In this same bill, you're saying here now, authority to raise loan, right? That's on page 3, right? You're saying to cover borrowings for the period July to December 2019. That's a problem in our view, Mr. President. Again, I accept the argument that they are not correlated and what have you. I accept that. But, Mr. President, this in particular, this seems to be an issue. In other words, you can't say it's for August to December here, and then you're still saying in the same bill it's for July to December. That's not making any sense. Mr. President, we understand to the extent what this really will seek to do. Now, we know, for example, Mr. President, that the interest rate is not negotiated as yet, the terms of repayment is not negotiated as yet, the fees is not negotiated as yet. Now, we also see, Mr. President, tabling of the agreements. We hear from the government side that the bill, the agreement and so on will be signed and it will be concessionary. We understand that argument. So now, Mr. President, the question is, will we see this being tabled? Has there ever been any tabling of this particular bill? We do not believe that in recent history there were. And, Mr. President, what we are calling for is, if you're going to go ahead with this, Mr. President, you must try and adhere to what it says clearly. So tabling of the agreement. We need to know exactly what is the interest rate, terms and repayment, and the fees. We, Mr. President, certainly would like to just express that. And, Mr. President, I do apologize for mixing the two up. And I thought they were jointly related. Thank you very much.
Senator Andre Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank Senator Steele for the elaboration in terms of the various targeted areas. But it would be useful, in our view, in going forward, that this information be presented to us in the documents early. This is the Senate. And I mean, I don't think any one of us here who represent the different interest groups, apart from the senators that sits on the other side, who has an opportunity during the cabinet discussions and other caucuses to be able to look into those matters. It is not really fair for us on this side to be now told about this, because certainly we came here wondering what is it being used for? Because in the one page I'm speaking about the schedule, it is just very vague, and it left us to wonder what would it be used for, and especially in a period, which I'll address later, where there are all different things flying around the place, right? There's the issue of probably I shouldn't go there, but there's the issue of the investigations that we are calling for on certain matters, right, which I'll address on the adjournment. When we get papers like this that does not identify our constituents are asking us these questions, and therefore we are making a request of the government side to be more forthcoming, not wait on the last minute, and especially in a period like now where we got this just before the carnival. When we got this information, and it was not full in its totality, as a matter of fact, we got this, I think, on Thursday or Friday of last week, and it was sent to us simultaneously as it was sent to the House. How do we know that there are no amendments made in the House? We did not get, to the best of my recollection, we did not get any additional information, Mr. President, which indicate that this is now the finalized bills that are coming to us. The House sat on Friday, and we take the responsibility to perform our duties, but we are asking for those requests. Yes, as I said, a one-pager, and I'm glad for the explanation. I did a quick math. Yes, it's add up to 40-something million. One further question. I'm not sure if I got it correctly, and Senator Steele can help me here. In the question of the US $3 million that is to be used in relation to, is it CASIP? You said this has to do with the fiber optic project? Fiber optic? Does this have anything to do with the current running of the cables that is taking place? And if the answer is yes, I will have a follow-up. If the answer is no, then I will say no. It's equipment. Yeah. And could I ask whether or not the government have anything to do with that project that is currently taking place in terms of the running of the cables? No. It's digital. Okay, thanks. I just wanted clarity because I was hearing I had different information, but I wanted to clarify it. No, I heard my information because I spoke to some of our local guys who originally were involved in the project, and I know why they were why they are no longer there. I formed the impression that it was a private sector purely driven project, but it's PPP. Public partner, so the government is part of it?
Yes, it's government.
No, thanks, okay. So, and okay, therefore, if it is, so if it is PPP, therefore mean that government has a stake. It's investment. It would have been useful to see, and I'm not aware if it has taken place, but it would have been useful to see the transference of what I call local knowledge. All that I'm seeing, and I know the aspect had to do with equipment, the aspect of speed, because there was our local company, as far as I gathered, who had the project originally and had difficulties in delivering because they needed to come up with funds that they were unable to come up with. Yes? If the government is involved, as you are indicated, it would therefore be important, if it is not too late, Minister Steele and the government side, if it is not too late, to make a request to have locals involved in this project so we can have transference of skills. Because as we pass from time to time, the main guys that deals with fiber optic works with cable and wireless. But outside of these, we had the guys who are formerly with cable and wireless who have their own local companies. So we have limited people who are trained in fiber optic. But every time we pass, we see a small transport pull up on the side of the road. Guys are connecting fiber, which is highly technical. But I've not seen any local person involved in this. So I'm making that request from the labor movement's point of view, that if it is not too late, I do not know how long the project have to go again, that it ought to be local involvement. And also, I have observed that in local areas, we have some of these individuals who have been brought into the country to do this work are the ones that are directing traffic. Now, these are not skilled jobs. These are not skilled jobs. And therefore, we should insist, because it is a PPP, especially because it is a PPP, that our local people, especially when you're moving from village to village or from a parish to a parish, that we have the local people involved in those aspects that you do not require training for. You do not require training to call traffic, to direct traffic. But certainly, on the high-end area in terms of skill, we should select, and probably that's where the Imani comes in. Probably a section. This kind of thinking is what we need to do. Probably there should be a section identified to the Imani who is designed to be assigned to projects like these, so that at the end of the day, in the not too distant future, even if we have to bring in equipment, because it is not available, but we'll have local knowledge, right, that can assist. So that would be my contribution in relation to this here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, if I could, in wrapping up this debate, I'll start by addressing some of the points that Senator Redhead made. Mr. President, we're not in school there. We're not in school. We're not in school. I was a little confused, but I gave latitude. So first, there is a separation, fundamentally separate in terms of what is being asked in the supplementary appropriation bill, and we'll go into that debate in a few minutes. But the $9 million that we're asking there, well, when we're asking the House to approve, is extra monies. A budget was passed in November of 2018, Mr. President. That was $1.1 billion. That's a total budget. So throughout the course of the year, through savings, through additional revenues, money that's come in, it's not just recurrent, there's capital there too, additional resources, Mr. President, have been made available through prudent management of the economy, of our fiscal management. Through prudence, Mr. President, we have got an additional $9 million that we didn't have at the beginning of the year. So what do? Do we stick it in the bank? Do we put it under the bed? Do we bury it in a hole? No, Mr. President, we identify areas of national need and we increase our spending there. So these are additional monies, Mr. President, on top of the $1.1 billion that were approved in the 2019 estimates for revenues and expenditure. That's a positive thing. Senator on the other side is making out as if there's something untoward. This is bad management. This is very, very good management. This is extra monies that we're applying to areas of need. And we'll get into that discussion in a little while. The loan, the budget loan authorization bill, this is 118 million. We could say no to the World Bank. We don't have to take that money. We could say no to it. An international institution is offering Grenada $118 million on the softest of soft loans that you can find to invest in 4 specific areas: our healthcare system, digital governance, improving the efficiency of government service, how government interacts with the public to make it easier for the public to access government services. So first of all, we can say no to healthcare. They want to give us $6 million. Let's say no. No, we don't want it. Then they want to improve government services. We can say no, we'll stay with what we have. So somebody living in Grenville has to spend an hour and a half getting into town, queue up for an hour at the revenue office, waste an entire day, or somebody from Carriacou or Petit Martinique has to spend 2 days, bust their tails on the Osprey, come over, rent a place, have to get transport up and down, up and down. We can say no to that. It's nonsense, Mr. President, but we're not in school. I'll give the gentleman a little lesson. So, Mr. President, we could say no to CARSIP. To get Grenada onto the information superhighway, broadband connectivity with the rest of the world, length and breadth of Grenada, connecting to the outside world, fiber optic cables. This will enable government to operate more efficiently. This is for the private sector. All these young men and women here in Grenada, some bright young people we have here in Grenada, Mr. President, working in some very innovative areas in digital media, developing applications, developing technologies, taking advantage of this high-speed network we have, which will get even faster, which means that they are competitive. Again, this thing about world-class, why don't we elevate ourselves, Mr. President? Elevate our thinking, elevate our ambition to enable our young men and women, our industrious young men and women, so that they compete with somebody in New York, in London, in Tel Aviv, wherever it may be, so we can compete on that international stage. The gentleman across there wants us to say no to it. Keep your, what was that amount? So for the digital governance, that's $15 million US. CARSIP, for $18 million, we'll just say to them no. That's what the gentleman on the other side is saying, Mr. President. So we should say no to the World Bank. And then what was the other area? This development policy credit. So work in terms of improving our policies at a fiscal level, stuff we're doing with blue growth. All of those things. We should say no. That's $20 million US. We should say no to that too. Mr. President, I don't know where this gentleman is coming from. So the answer is yes, Senator Redhead. We need to be saying yes to this. 0.5%, 5 to 10 years, you don't have to pay anything back. When you do have to pay it back, up to 40 years. When we can upgrade our broadband network, first world capabilities for the development of this nation, a regional healthcare service that's going to help improve much needed improvement in our healthcare system and other services. So, Mr. President, the gentleman has it wrong. Sorry, Senator on the other side, sorry. So, Mr. President, this is actually a positive thing. There are countries that are falling over themselves. Barbados is currently in a structural adjustment program. They're following the model that Grenada followed. They're not entitled to either support. They would wish that they were in our position right now to take advantage. And well, maybe there are persons there too who would object and say, no, this is a bad thing. But Mr. President, this is a good thing, and it is recognition of the progressiveness of this country, the progress that we have made over the course of these last 6-7 years, and those monies are being put to extremely good use that will help develop our nation. So, Senator Lewis, I can't speak specifically to the points you raised, but the principle, I agree with the principle. So where you have a project which involves either private entities, foreign entities, then those services, goods and services that can be provided from local sources should take priority. So that principle, agree with. I don't know the specifics, as I said, that you are speaking to, but the principle that you speak to, I think is certainly something that we support, and it's discussions we have all the time in Cabinet when we are working with outside entities. The only thing I would flag is, I mean, the technology that is involved in this project is high-tech, it's high-skilled work. So whether we have persons who are qualified, not qualified, you know, again, the principle of providing that opportunity so our workers can learn and be able to provide that level of service, again, I think is a very noble one. But I said the specifics, I can't speak to, but the principles that you speak to, I fully accept. So, Mr. President, in closing, this loan authorization bill, this $118 million, is of high value to Grenada, is high value to the people of Grenada, it's of high value and will be a significant contribution to our economic and social development. And it's for those reasons, Mr. President, I commend this bill for its second reading.
Mr. President. Yeah, Mr. President, I just want to say this. No, I am not in the business of arguing, but all I am saying is this particular budget loan authorization bill did not spell out what the loan was going to be used for. So the confusion, to an extent, whatever it's worth, came as a result, Mr. President. We were sent this. Now, the leader of government business has the layout. Why can't we, as other parliamentarians, get a layout too, so we could also critique as we see the need to, Mr. President, what the purpose of the loan is for? They are just reporting to us. And I am just saying, Mr. President, in relation to what the loan will be used for, this is where the concern is. So I do apologize for mixing up these figures, but I am saying, if you're bringing this, bring to an extent what it will be used for. $118 million, we hear it's little money, little concessionary rates and so on, but say what it will be spent on by paper, so we could see, we could critique as well, along with you. Thank you.
A second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
a bill for an act shortly entitled 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Act 2019.
Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move the third reading of this bill.
Members understand it's a money bill, so there's no need to get to the committee stage. Yes. Honorable members, the question is that the 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2019 be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2019 be read a third time and passed. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Just let me make a point. I've allowed a back and forth debate, and I think it's emerging why I allowed it. So it's not that I am encouraging a breach of the rules, but it's, it's important. Senator Steele, always remember that the public also has to follow the discourse in the chamber, right? So while it may be clear to you, but if there are indications that the public may not be that clear, then you also have an obligation, because we really as lawmakers are not really only speaking to ourselves. We also are speaking to the governed, who have an interest in the laws which we pass. So see this as an opportunity for speaking to the audience outside of the chamber, and don't be constrained or contained by only us who are assembled in the chamber here. I just thought I would make that point, because that underscores why I allow the latitude to take place. Yes?
A bill for an act shortly entitled 2019 Budget Loan Authorization Act 2019.
Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2019.
What's sorry.
An act to appropriate an additional sum of $9,967,790 to service the state of Grenada for the period August 1st to December 31st, 2019, shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Act 2019.
Mr. President, I beg to move the relevant standing order of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
The question is, the standing orders be suspended to allow this bill to be taken through all of its stages, bill namely Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2019, through all of its stages at this sitting of the House. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary view, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do indeed have it. Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of this bill. Mr. President, as this is a money bill, I wish to signal to this honourable House that I have the Speaker's seal of consent to proceed. Mr. President, the Section 23 of the Public Finance Management Act 2015 states that if in a financial year the amount budgeted for a specific program or initiative is either insufficient or there is no budgetary allocation, a supplementary estimate outlining the sums required should be approved by this House. And again, insufficient or no budgetary allocation, new items, new monies being brought in. Therefore, Mr. President, we're seeking to introduce a supplementary appropriation bill providing for the issue of such sums from the Consolidated Fund totaling $9,967,790. This comprises of capital expenditure of $775,840 and recurrent expenditure of $775,000. No, sorry. I'll come back and correct that number, Mr. President. Mr. President, I will highlight some of the significant allocations relevant to the Supplementary Appropriation 2019. So under Vote 21, pensions and gratuities, $2 million is allocated. This is an advance payment towards any pension resolution to retirees who join the public service in an established post after the 22nd of April, 1985. Served for 26 2/3 years and attained the retirement age of 60 years, the qualifying individuals. Mr. President, what we're effectively doing is topping up their NIS pension to help ensure that these retirees receive at least 70% of their last salary. Mr. President, this would not be a one-off payment, but a monthly commitment that would supplement the NIS received by the pensioners who meet this criteria. This move by government is purely voluntary and underscores government's position towards pension reform. That although this government does not have a legal obligation, it is committed to doing what is morally just, fair, and financially responsible. Mr. President, we also recognize that with the current impasse on the pension matter, and because the matter is before the courts, I don't think we should go to too much detail there. But with the matter in the courts, any further delays in finding a solution would simply extend the hardship that these retired men and women currently face. This is why government is sympathetic to their plight and have taken action to bring relief to those retired officers. Under Vote 50, Ministry of Health, Social Security and International Business, $2,139,646 is allocated, of which over $1 million is allocated to the procurement of pharmaceuticals, and specifically for the areas of cancer treatment and for kidney disease. So this is addressing, Mr. President, areas with all of the deficiencies that we know we have within our healthcare system. We're doing everything that we can do in those areas to provide additional support, especially in those critical areas. The balance, $1,003,646, is provided to cover the expenditure of those nurses who served under Gren case, who are now employed directly by the Ministry of Health. So, Mr. President, these additional resources underscores our continued commitment to providing the best possible healthcare service for our people. Under Vote 10, the Office of the Prime Minister, Mr. President, as our economy continues to grow and more opportunities are created and more of those benefits trickle down to more and more people, we must also ensure that those who remain vulnerable are provided with the necessary assistance. As such, an additional allocation of $200,000 is provided to ensure that our students and senior citizens are able to meet their basic needs. Under Vote 30, the Ministry of Infrastructure Development, Public Utilities, Energy, Transportation and Implementation, $680,750 is allocated. Mr. President, this is for the operations of the Transportation Board and for the salaries of the new traffic wardens that are deployed earlier this year. I noticed the police were just outside, down below, speed cameras, and stopping a number of persons who were speeding along our roads. But the issue, Mr. President, of whether it's illegal parking, whether it is other offensive behaviors that are adding to issues of road safety or congestion are a priority for this government. Hence the introduction of this traffic warden system, which we are seeing the benefits certainly in our city centres. And in addition to addressing some of those road offences that are resulting in congestion and other inconveniences, Mr. President, we've also created opportunities for over 40 young men and women who have taken on the challenge of this new career path. Under Vote 12, police, $1,070,000 is allocated to cover salaries of new recruits, so additional police officers enter in the police force, and for those officers who have recently promoted to higher ranks and rewarded with increased salaries. Mr. President, Grenada is one of the safest countries in the world. But that safety and security is not something that we should take for granted. Hence the need for constant investment in our police force, our police services. Under Vote 35, the Ministry of Social Development and Housing, the sum of $1,675,000 is allocated for increased support in the areas of child protection. Mr. President, we all know the scourge of child abuse that is plaguing our nations. We've heard outcries both at a government level and at a public level, and the call for additional support, additional resources to tackle that. So, Mr. President, the extra funding that is available here will go in part to the Child Protection Agency, in addition to providing resources for our vulnerable children, support for home care, our outreach to shut-ins, and those who are most vulnerable within our communities. And finally, on the recurrent side, Mr. President, under Vote 40, the Ministry of Education and Human Resource Development, the sum of $423,054, which will go towards supporting Grenadian students studying in Trinidad. The government of Trinidad cancelled their support program for regional students back in 2018, and to ensure that those Grenadian students who are enrolled in programs there up to 2020-2021 have the financial resources they need to be able to complete their studies, and those sums, Mr. President, are used to support that. On the capital expenditure side, the sum of $775,840 of grant resources has been brought into the system. There are two areas there. So under the Ministry of Climate Resilience, a project CFAS, which is Center for Environmental Fisheries and Aquaculture Science. This is a project under the GIZ ICAS project, which is looking at building greater resilience in our coastal communities. This project is looking at monitoring and data collection of our coastline, so that data can help predict what is happening to our coastlines, and that data is also essential, that empirical data, when it comes to applying for resources from the likes of the Green Climate Fund in terms of the project development, where those projects, those proposals need to be evidence-based. So this is the sum of $275,000 that's coming into the system, and then $500,000 for, again, a regional health project. So, Mr. President, although this government has and continues to make significant progress across the board, we recognize there's still a considerable amount of work to be done. But what this supplementary appropriation of $9,967,790 of additional, these are additional resources allocated to areas such as health, social development, child protection, road safety, our security, support for our students, pensioners, nurses, further demonstrates that this government puts people first. Mr. President, it's for those reasons I commend this bill for its second reading.
Question is that the bill be read a second time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The labor movement welcomes the money set aside for pension, because we see this as Senator Simon Steele indicated, this is a court matter. And if someone has $100 for me and I can get 20 now, I will take it. Yes. So we welcome that. I mean, anything that can help alleviate any issues that someone may have. We do maintain that the main purposes that our people would like these monies up front for has not yet been addressed, but we are confident on this down the road, the aspect of the formula that will give you a lump sum of money in your hand, because the pensioners live from hand to mouth. Yes, the pensioners live from hand to mouth and not been able to address some of the outstanding issues in terms of their finances, their liabilities, will still impact upon them. However, we welcome, I want to place on record, we welcome that development in relation to persons would now be able to get some monies that they did not receive in the past. Yes, so we welcome that. A question, I'll ask a question, make a comment. Hopefully that under the monies of the police, which we support, security is an extremely important matter that we do not. As a matter of fact, we share the view that enough has not been done for security. In terms of the human resources aspect, the care of the police officers, if you look at the facilities, if you look at the police facilities, if you look at the housing conditions under which they live, in the stations, they must be commended. They must be commended for going beyond the call of duty. Yes? I mean, there are places that these colleagues live, and when the rain comes, they get wet. It is not just about infrastructure in terms of the road, but we have to treat our security officers with the level of care and concern that is needed. In relation to this $1.something million, we would like to know if any of this part of it is designed for the monies that has been put aside or been earmarked for the paying of the annual vacation leave of the police officers. Why is this important? As I said, I know it's a ticklish matter, because on the question of security, especially the security of the Prime Minister, I don't want to go there. But it's important to focus on the following. Stop it. Yes, this is not a private matter. Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm glad that this is raised, Mr. President, because the question of investigative journalism that our goodly senator spoke about earlier on, if you do investigative journalism, it would require you to go there. The aspect of annual vacation leave must be managed properly. Because even from a security point of view, if you are not taking your vacation, it can lead to tiredness. it can lead to a drop in your level of alertness. So that
matters touching and concerning personal security of an individual in a manner which may improve the awareness of people who may have untoward intentions. I understand the need for debate. I understand the need for investigative journalism. But I also understand the need for caution. And I'm wondering whether the negatives, see, when it comes to the matter of personal security of the person, it's a matter that ought to be treated very delicately, and I don't know if it's proper for the chamber to be venturing into an area which is exceedingly, to my mind, sensitive. I don't think it is wise for us to debate who may be weary, who may be tired, who may not be sufficiently alert to effectively be able to use a firearm. I think it's an area, I don't want to shut down the debate. I run the risk of being accused, but I prefer to err on the side of caution. And in this chamber under which I superintend, I think I have a responsibility. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. The circumstances may have been different. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But our history records that almost an entire cabinet and the primary office of political leadership suffered a particular fate. We live in a completely changed world. I would appeal to I'm not making a ruling, so, which I can do, but I'm making an appeal that this subject matter is not the best place for us to deal with. I think it creates certain compromises, which my life's wisdom indicates to me that we ought not to venture down into that path. So I'm not making a ruling, which does not equate to my incapacity to make a ruling. But I just want to, I'm certain senators will have a certain appreciation of what I'm trying to say. It might be a sexy, for want of a, speaking figuratively, it might be a sexy political subject. But I believe therein lies certain security compromising issues. And I would prefer for us to leave those matters alone. So I'm not making a ruling, I'm appealing to the better part of sobriety and reason. But if I have to make a ruling, I will not be constrained in making one. Senator Lewis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I wish to assure you that I do recognize, as I said before, the sensitivity of the nature, and I rest my case. But just to also assure you, Mr. President, and the House, that, and I know that, and I am sure that that was not the intention of the President. My contribution had nothing to do with the politics of anything. I just wanted to raise that there and to say I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the points that you have raised. Yes, and it was not intention to go anywhere else at all. And I thank you very much for that, because it is indeed a sensitive nature. So in closing, I just want to repeat our welcome again. And I just wanted to spend a little time on this, because I know that pension matter for the workers, whether it is $300, $100 more for anyone, means a lot. I really, really want to place that there. But also most important, because this is a message I get every day. This is a message I get every day from the same teachers who have contributed so much to the passing of all of our children and grandchildren. And despite the challenges that they went through, we saw a 5% increase in the performance of these children while they saw a docking of their pay. But what is the most important is the aspect of that gratuity, which I know will be addressed elsewhere. So once again, I just rest my case. Thank you very much.
Senator the Honorable Winston Gawi.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to give my support to the second reading of this bill and to highlight two areas as it relates to the Ministry of Health. And we do know, as a ministry and as a government, we have been constantly looking at ways and means to ensure that we improve our care and the level of service that has been provided to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique is at the highest level. And we will stop at nothing until we ensure that we are at a place where our people can access proper health care, proper service, and walk into an environment that is conducive for healing to take place. Because we do know that the environment, the aesthetics, it too have its place in providing healing. So what we have seen here in this supplementary appropriation bill is another move by this government to ensure that we continue to build on the services that we provide within the Ministry of Health, and to ensure that health practitioners are at the place where they can provide optimum service to our people. So hiring of new persons or new nurses and so forth for the health sector is critical in achieving this objective.
The Deputy President in the chair.
So, Mr. Deputy President, I am proud as a member of this government to stand here and to give support to this, because we have heard it constantly that our health care is not where it ought to be. Oh, well, I agree. But this is a move to bring it up to a higher level. So kudos to the Minister of Health and the able Minister of Health and his team of workers to continue to provide high level of service to our people. So I give my full support to this. And secondly, Mr. President, and I know the matter is sub judice, so we can't say much on it as it relates to the pension issue. But I do know we do not have a problem with pension at this point in time, Mr. Deputy President, because this has been long settled already. And I think my fellow senator on the other side can nod in approval to say the pension issue has been settled. There is a question as it relates to gratuity. And that is what has to be settled in the court. But there has been an approval and agreement that the take-home pay for retirees will be 70% of the last salary. So what they're getting right now might be in the vicinity, a maximum probably 58% from the NIS. And government has agreed with the trade union to top up that final take-home salary, top up what they're getting from NIS, which might equate to 58% of the final salary to 70%. And that has been agreed. So we're working towards that. But this, more than this, Mr. President, this is a fulfillment to a promise we've made. You know, ever so often in election campaigning, you say you're going to do this and that, and when you win, some people go far away from it. Not this government. We have decided, when we made a promise, we're going to fulfill it. And we fought hard. And today, we are fulfilling this by putting in the appropriation bill $2 million so that those pensioners who have retired already, and we always hear that they are retiring into poverty, we're saying they're going to be the upgrade. They're going to be the upgrade to 70% of the final salary, and it will take them a long way. So those who've spoken to me, and I feel the pain, this is a welcome addition for them. We would have loved to go the full haul and get its trade union would have signed off and get everything finalized so everybody will be on the same page. But hear this, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President. We do know and we understand how the court system operates. We have no involvement there. The judiciary will do what it has to do. But this could be a long drawn-out matter. From looking from what we've seen elsewhere, what this government is saying, the very set people we've been told of retiring into poverty, we're saying they matters to us. So in the meantime, while the matter is in the court, and the court will take whatever time to adjudicate, those persons will still remain in poverty. And we want to fix that. And this $2 million that is budgeted for this 5-month window will ensure that those persons will receive that upgrade. And who knows? It might extend some lives, because people now can be able to take care of the basic needs. Those things that they couldn't do before, they're able to do it now because they're going to get that upgrade. And I want to believe that when I listen to my colleague Senator for Labour on the other side saying that they welcome it, I do believe you welcome it because it is what you've been asking for. So you give the government the credit. We have listened and we have done it, but more so, we have fulfilled a promise and a commitment we made to the people of this country. And as we have done with many other commitments or promises we have made, we spoke of going to upgrade the healthcare service. Yes, we are doing that because it matters to all of us. Because this is our people in our country. If the healthcare service is not at where it's supposed to be, we are going to feel it. So I'm extremely happy today, Mr. Deputy President, to lend my voice to the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Redhead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. No, Mr. Deputy President, I am happy that we cleared up that misunderstanding earlier on. So I will now comment specifically on the supplementary appropriation budget bill. Now, Mr. President, we heard clearly what was expressed by the Leader of Government's business. Now, we have some concerns with certain areas. As I said earlier on, Mr. President, we are not against the Ministry of Health. We are not against, in terms of the allocations, we are not against pension and gratuity. We are not against, Mr. President, the allocations for the police officers. I want to join with the Labour Senator and also the leader of government business who expressed, Mr. President, the need to improve security in and around Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. That is very important. We have no issues with that, right? So we never did. But, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, there are certain votes that we are concerned about. Now, vote 1, as I have said, the Governor General. The expenditure is on the recurrent side. The needs of the Governor General, in our view, Mr. President, is to have the Governor General resident upgraded. In other words, if you're going to allocate any sum of money, because based on what they are saying is that this allocation will help improve the country and the economy and so on. But expenditure on the recurrent side largely do not do that. It's more on the capital side. We have identified, Mr. President, additionally 3 other areas that we believe capital funding should have been made available to help cushion from August to December 2019. So the area, vote 1, Governor General is 1, the Governor General residence. Vote 3, of course, the Supreme Court. Mr. President, the judiciary has its own issues and challenges. We heard this morning, Mr. Deputy President, that there will be efforts and so on forthcoming. Again, we don't know how much it is costing. We don't know what issues exist there, and we hope, Mr. President, no issues at the moment will exist, and that the court systems could be functional in a more prudent manner in time to come. Mr. President, vote 10, Office of the Prime Minister. Now, the leader of government business consistently explains this to be that you're paying something for young people and so on. But again, we are making the point. In the Ministry of Social Development and in the Ministry of Education, there are assistance programs available for people. The Ministry of Education gives scholarships. So for the Prime Minister's ministry to be paying for education or educational opportunities for people, that does not look good. It does not look right. And if you're telling me we're in a period of prudent fiscal management, this money, Mr. President, that you're allocating just to do that does not make any sense in my view. Mr. President, again, for the Ministry of Social Development, if you're saying that is what the money is for, the Ministry of Social Development carries that responsibility. Put the money where it will be best used. That's just the issue. Mr. President, the Ministry of Infrastructure Development, Public Utilities, Energy, Transport, and Implementation. All right. Now, you have $618,000 for the recurrent expenditure. Now, in my view, when I hear the Ministry of Infrastructure Development, I am thinking capital projects. Nothing on the capital side, only on the recurrent side. But you're saying to me that this 9.9 is going to help grow the economy or whatever it is that you're claiming. Again, we have an issue with that, vote 30. Vote 40, Mr. Deputy President. Finally, the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, and Religious Affairs. Now, we don't have an issue with the allocation on the recurrent side because, again, part in the issue, we are just giving figures. There is no breakdown to explain what, for example, in the Ministry of Youth, the 25,000 will be used for. No breakdown at all. You just give a figure. So, in the Ministry of Education, Mr. President, we are saying that school repair programs. Now, the new school term is going to be commencing in September. The question is, recently we had a situation, Mr. President, where schools came under the microscope in terms of their conditions, right? A whole tank fall down, all kind of thing took place. My question is this, are there any allocations to help school repairs? And I listened faintly to the Minister of Education give an update in relation to that a program was established. But based on what I am seeing here, because this is going to cover the rest of the period for August to December, there is no allocation for capital projects to maintain, or in terms of the school maintenance program. So I don't know what is going on there. Again, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, the fact that just about $775,000 is allocated on the capital side and $9.1 million is on the recurrent side, economically, we don't see that this is going to have any great or massive spin-off on the economy because, again, jobs and other things are created through the capital side of the budget. So we are not really satisfied with that. And again, we do not have an extreme breakdown to know department by department under the various votes, what these monies will be used for. So while I hear all the accolades and so on, that's good. But, Deputy President, we have some concerns with the economy, and certainly we will get to that in the near future. So thank you very much.
Senator Steele.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deputy President. So just addressing some of the comments that were made from the other side. So first of all, Senator Lewis, and the general comments about annual vacation and the need to manage that, correct. I think the Prime Minister has been very, very clear in many of the statements that he's made that where you have, and this is something that's been historic, Mr. Deputy President, for a generation in government where persons, public officers at the highest levels to the lowest levels accumulate significant amounts of leave. I believe the rule is you cannot accumulate more than 100 days, and there are officers who have accumulated 200, 300 days. So we're aware of that, and that is something that has to be managed. It is an administrative thing. It's not at the executive level. Us as ministers, Mr. Deputy President, that's not something we get involved in. It is at the administrative level that it needs to be managed. And this has been highlighted, and it's been stated at the highest levels that measures will be put in place to address this. So I couldn't agree more. Senator Redhead, so just going through this, vote 1, Governor General's residence, and in fairness, you don't have the information there, so I will be lenient. But the money's there, 600,000 of that $655,000 is actually to the Integrity Commission, and the Integrity Commission sits under the Governor General's vote, and that is for the operations of the Integrity Commission. So that I hope answers that question. Vote 3, Supreme Court. This is actually for something very specific. So there is a judge's residence that is currently being refurbished. And in the interim, when that residence is being refurbished, there is a need to put up those judges in hotel accommodation. So that's where that figure is from. Vote 40, you mentioned education. Remember, it's important for all of us to remember, Mr. Deputy President, these are additional monies on top of the $1.1 billion in that was part of the regular budget, or the budget was passed here back in November of last year. So there are programs that identified how many hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on capital, how many hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on the recurrent side. And this administration, this government is very proud in the focus it's done on reducing the recurrent expenditure, the cost of running government, and the increase on the capital side, which is investing in productive areas. So looking at this supplemental in isolation and saying, well, it's all recurrent, that's distorted. That's a distorted picture. Again, Mr. President, as I said in the opening, we could have put the money under the mattress. Didn't have to spend those extra resources that were generated either through savings or additional monies coming in. But instead, Mr. President, the focus of this has been on people, on our nurses, on our students, on our children, on security, and so forth. That's where we've chosen to spend it. And if you look at each of those areas, there is a consensus, Mr. President, I think on every area. Students, nurses, pensioners, children, the vulnerable. So, Mr. President, we could have just left the money there or done something else with it, but we decided to focus on those areas where we thought there was need. So I said that vote 40, a significant portion of that under education, is about providing support for those Grenadian students who are currently studying in Trinidad who no longer are able to access support from the Trinidadian government, and government has set in. But talk about the school maintenance and so forth. I said within the regular budget, allocations are made there. Tens of millions of dollars are being spent on the upkeep, maintenance of our schools, new schools, etc. So, Mr. President, as I said in my introduction, these are additional resources that have been allocated to areas that we believe are of need and touch people and touch those persons who are in most need of additional support. And it's for those reasons, Mr. Deputy President, that I commend this bill for its second reading.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes does have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Act 2019.
Senator Steele.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the third reading of this bill.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Act 2019.
Members of the senators, we do have lunch ready, and the proposal is that we take our break for lunch now. Some of us who need to eat on time may be facilitating. So we will break for lunch now, and we'll resume at 1:30. If that is appropriate for the members. Okay, so the House now stands adjourned until 1:30.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.
It's coming, the new family of EC Polymer Notes.
What is different about these notes?
The feel.
Polymer notes are made from a thin plastic film which makes the notes feel smoother than the paper notes.
The orientation.
The notes have a portrait orientation. You will read the notes from top to bottom instead of left to right as you do with the paper notes.
Unique tactile feature.
The front of each note has raised bumps at the top left-hand corner. These bumps form shapes that are familiar to you.
Holographic foil strip.
This feature is on the $20, $50, and $100. When you tilt the notes, the images and colors in this section will change.
New image on the $50.
The back of the $50 bears the image of former governor of the ECCB, the late Honorable Sir K. Dwight Venner.
New signature.
All the notes bear the signature of the current governor, Timothy N.J. Antwine.
EC Polymer Notes. Cleaner, safer, stronger.
Seatbelts are not as confining as a wheelchair. Drive carefully. A message from the Traffic Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force.
Grenada's economy is heading for its 7th year of consistent growth, averaging over 5%. Unemployment was reduced by 20%, while debt to GDP ratio was reduced from 108% to 63.5%. NNP committed to the economic and social development of our people. NNP delivering on the promise.